Are you cutting vegetables wrong? Today I'm sharing with you how to prep and cut vegetables the right way and common mistakes I see all the time. The first mistake I always see people make is that they're not washing their fruits and vegetables before they eat or prepare them. I always rinse my vegetables before I cut and sometimes after as well. Most vegetables you can easily just rinse under water and they can get rid of any bugs, dirt, or debris. The first vegetable I see tons of mistakes on are bell peppers. People waste so much of the pepper. I always see people just cutting off this whole quarter of the top and a whole quarter of the bottom, but you don't need to do that. So let me show you how I do it. Now I don't take this whole top part off and waste it, but I am going to just cut very, very close to the crown. That way I can just pull this whole middle part. If you want really nice, thin, uniform strips, then this is what I do. I'll take this bottom part off as well. You can cut it into strips. You can dice it. So now you've got this hollow pepper, and I like to just cut it down one of the edges and then open it up like this. If it's too big or it's too bendy like this, you can also cut down another time, and so it's easier to deal with like this. If you want to do strips like for fajitas, I usually just put it the shiny outside down, because going this way it's going to be a lot harder to cut because the skin is waxier. So it's always better to do it from the flesh, inside flesh down, and then just do uniform pieces. And now you've got these pepper sticks that are perfect for snacking. You can also take these now and put them in a bunch, and then you can get a really uniform dice this way, like that. If you want larger chunks, you can also just cut these into about 1-inch pieces like this. Now I've got bigger chunks, put those together, line them up or stack them, and then cut them into 1-inch chunks. These are really good for stir fries, curries, anything like that. Next is a tricky one, and it's going to be avocado. There are so many unsafe ways to cut an avocado, but let me show you how I like to cut the avocado. First, you take your avocado like this, and then we're going to cut it straight down the center all the way around the pit inside. So I like to start usually at the top here until I hit the pit right here. You can see right down the middle, and then just rock my knife around. I'm not moving the fruit, I'm just moving the knife all the way around. Next, I twist it just like that, and you've got 2 avocado slices. To get this pit out, you have to be really careful or skilled. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can just put your fingers right on the back and just kind of pop it out, but then that kind of makes this part a little gooey and kind of squish, so I don't like doing that. You can use a fork or a spoon to kind of go right under the pit here, just gently, and kind of pop it out like that. And if you do choose to use the knife whack method, just be very careful, because I know a lot of people have messaged me saying I work in an ER and I see a lot of avocado whack patients in the emergency room. Kind of use the edge of the knife here and then just pop it out like that. Next, I like to take a spoon and just scoop the fruit out of the avocado like this, and then you can do with it whatever you want. One way I like to serve avocado is to do a little rose. So what I'll do is I'll just put my knife right at the very top and then just cut very thin slices, and then I'll show you a really pretty way to present the avocado. Okay, so now we've got a nicely sliced avocado. I'm just going to take my knife on one side. So we're just going to fan out the avocado like this. You can twist it into a little circle like this if you want to put it in a salad. So if you're making avocado toast or anything like that, you can just take a knife. If you're nervous, and I would do this on a cutting board like this, I just kind of score it, and then I like to just take a fork and just smash it inside of the skin like this, and you've got kind of a built-in bowl for smashed avocado. You can also do this with guacamole as well. One thing to remember with avocados is that they oxidize really quickly as well, which means that they're going to turn brown when they're exposed to the air. To prevent this, just put some plastic wrap right on the surface of the avocado, wrap it up really nice and tight, and then you don't have to worry about it turning brown. Also, did you know that you can freeze avocado? So if you just chop this up and put it in a bag or a Tupperware, you can totally put this in the freezer and then thaw it and use it like normal. Hey, really quick, if you're enjoying this video, would you just take a second and quickly subscribe to this channel? Most of the people who watch aren't subscribed, and so they don't get notified whenever I have a new upload. I upload new videos every Sunday, and I'm teaching people how to have more fun and confidence in the kitchen using the right methods and tools. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Everyone has their own way of doing this, but next I'm going to do carrots. To cut carrots, I like to make sure to get carrots that are as uniform as possible in size. I don't like getting some that are super thick and some that are really thin. So here we go. I like to hold the skinny part, the tip, with my hand here, and then always peel away from yourself. So I start here in the middle, go straight down. This gives you more control and there's less likelihood of you cutting yourself because you're not starting all the way up here where your fingers are and trying to go all the way down. This is the safest way. If you want to make ribbons of carrots, what you can do is take your vegetable peeler like this and then just go straight across. The first couple will be kind of wonky like this because it's like curved, but as it gets straighter and flatter, it's really easy to get these nice ribbons of carrot like this. You can, make garnishes with them. They're really cute like that. Well, now that I've got my carrot here, if I'm just gonna make a soup out of it, I like putting it on the flattest base. So now I've got a flat base here. Cut off the tip if there's anything kind of yucky on there. Cut off the stem here. And now you can cut this into coins like this that are flat. You can also cut it into strips. So I'll show you how to do both of those. So if you want coins that are just circular like this, you can just cut them like this. You want to make sure that the thickest pieces are the thinnest pieces, so then they'll cut evenly. Carrots especially are really hard, so you want to make sure that they're cut uniformly. If you want to do halves, like moons, I like to just cut the carrot straight down the middle like that, and then I'll cut that just like this. These are much easier, I feel like, to manage in a bite. So if you want to do carrot sticks like this, you just take your carrot and then, depending on how thick it is, you want to cut it straight down. So I'm gonna cut this pretty thin like that. Make sure it's flat on the cutting board, and then you can just go straight into strips like this. So you can cut them into sticks like this for dipping, snacking. If you want minced carrot to put in like fried rice or anything like that, you can take these sticks that you've julienned and then you just chop this up like this into little pieces. This is also really nice for soups because they're nice and small and manageable pieces to eat. This next one is one I see many different ways being cut. It's celery. Some vegetables like celery and lettuce, I like to rinse kind of downwards with the stem on top so then everything flushes out. If I were to rinse them going like this and having the water go in here, all of that water and that dirt is just going to collect in the bottom right here. So what I like to do is I take a whole bunch of celery like this, and then I'll take off like this bottom to about 2 inches. This can actually be kept, and if you just place it in a bowl of water, it will start growing out little celery stalks out of the middle. So then you can just eat them just like new celery. So here's the bottom, and what I like to do is I'm going to rinse this from the top, flush it down towards the bottom. One other thing to mention is with this bottom celery, go ahead and wash this. See all that dirt under there? And you can also keep this in a bag full of vegetable scraps and then use this in bone broth. That's the same with any of these vegetable scraps that you want to throw out. Just put them in a bag, put them in your freezer, and then when you have enough veggie scraps, just go ahead and make some Instant Pot bone broth. So we're gonna take this off, and what I like to do is just kind of inspect the outer pieces. This one is kind of gross, I'm not gonna eat that. So one option besides just cutting this whole thing off and throwing this away is I just take my knife like this and just kind of cut the gross part off. And then what I like to do is make sure that the celery is completely uniform. So what I'm going to do is cut this one straight down the middle until it reaches about the same width, and then I'm going to stop. So what I'll do is just kind of estimate until I get to that point. I'll take my knife right down the middle. So now it looks like I have 3 stalks, except I have 2. So now if I'm going to use these in a soup, I will just bunch up the whole celery bunch like this, and then line up my knife right at the base, and then cut them into uniform chunks, just like that. So now you see those were all cut in half, and now they're all about the same size. These are all going to cook uniformly now. So now I've got this celery that is perfectly uniform, and I can use this in any recipe that calls for chopped celery. Next, I'm going to do mushrooms. So mushrooms are grown in dirt, and they will come with dirt on them. That's totally normal. One thing you don't want to do is wash your mushrooms before you're ready to use them. Because mushrooms absorb so much water, you don't want to rinse them and have more water in them before you're really ready to use them. Otherwise, they'll get soggy, waterlogged, and they'll just kind of start to look a little sad. There's a gazillion different ways that you can cut mushrooms, but here are kind of the staple ways that you should learn how. First, a lot of people think that you can't eat the stem of a mushroom, and so they'll just like take out the whole thing. You can totally eat these stems. They're just like the rest of the mushroom, so don't worry about it. You don't have to pop them off. I would just keep them in just like this, unless you're making like stuffed mushrooms, then obviously you pop those out. So here are the main ways that I like to cut mushrooms. First, if you want to do slices, you can just slice the mushroom as thick or as thin as you want. I'll take my knife here on the very edge of the mushroom and just start slicing very thin in the same direction, and you want to make sure your pieces are nice and even like that. If you're doing the mushroom with the stem, same idea. Just go straight down, and it's important to cut all the way through the mushroom, otherwise it will get stuck like that. So I like to just place my mushroom straight on like this, go straight through the stem, and now you have little mushrooms that you can use for salads, saute for some burgers, stir fry, whatever you want. Another way I like to prepare mushrooms is to quarter them. So I'll just take one of those halves and just go straight down the center, just like that. It looks like you have a little thing to dip. If you want to mince some mushrooms, you're gonna do the exact same thing as slicing, but you're going to wanna do it really thin, and then kind of line up your pieces, and then just give it another chop the other way. Mushrooms have a lot of water, so you want to make sure that they never freeze in your fridge. Next, I'm going to show you the easiest way to cut green onions. I use green onions all the time. They're a total staple in Asian cooking, so let me show you how I use them. First, take off any packaging like that, kind of loosely look through them, make sure that there's not any bugs or dirt that you need to get off. And I like to make sure that they're about the same length, and then we will give them a nice cut. So you can use the green onion all the way from the white part all the way to the end. A lot of recipes say you can only use this white part. It is the most tender and most oniony flavor, but I like using the whole green onion. There's no reason why you can't. One of the most common mistakes I see is people will just take one green onion at a time, start at the top here, and just cut one piece at a time. And that's fine, but that's not very efficient. So what I like to do is take the whole bunch like this, and then we're going to just chop off the bottom as close to the root as we can. We don't want to waste anything. One thing you can do with these roots is you can put them in a jar of water and they will start sprouting up. You can just like reuse and regrow your own green onions. So one way I like to do them is to cut them into large chunks. In half first, and then I'll take this half, put it right back, and then cut again. And these are really nice pieces for, stir fries, doing hot pot. But if you want to mince everything up, just line them up, one motion. So now we've got a whole bunch of green onions. One cool trick is that you can just take this whole bunch and freeze them in a little baggie or a container. And these you can just pull right out of the freezer and use in your cooking. Next, we've got the humble potato. There's a million different ways to cut them, but the first one, we're going to go just straight down the middle, and we will cut some cubes. So you go this way with the potato and cut it into sticks, basically, of how big you want your cubes. Then you're going to do the exact same size going this way. So if you want a smaller dice, you just do small pieces like this. So you saw those smaller pieces that we did towards you are smaller. The bigger pieces in the middle are bigger. If you want a larger dice, you want to cut them uniformly like that. If you're making mashed potatoes, the smaller you cut your potatoes, the faster they're going to cook. But also, the more water you're going to get in your potatoes. If you cut them super small, they're going to get kind of waterlogged. If you want to cut fries, first you want to take off anything off the outside of the potato that looks kind of questionable. So we're first going to go down to make kind of like sheets of potato. So we're going to make them really thin like this. Okay, now I like to separate right down the middle because like I said before, we always want to get the flattest base. So these were together, opening them up like a book, and then I'm going to put that largest base down on the bottom. So now we've got a flat base right here, and then we're going to cut these into thin fries, just like this. So we've got fries, little potato sticks like this. If you don't want them to look too rustic, like on the tops like this, you can go on the other side and chop off the ends, so then you get like perfect rectangles. One thing to note with potatoes is that once they are cut, they will start oxidizing right away. That means that the air will react to the potato and then it will start turning kind of a reddish rust color, and that's fine. What you can do is just put your cut potatoes in a bowl of cold water, and then the starches will kind of leach out and it will prevent that oxidation from happening. I also did lettuce the other day, and so I'm going to show you how to do iceberg lettuce and romaine lettuce. Let's start out with some lettuce, or should I say let us start out with some lettuce. So first I've got some romaine lettuce like this. This middle part of the greens are the most tender. They're soft, they're not super like wilted and like really hard or tough because those large leaves on the outside haven't been sitting in the sun or on the ground for a long time. The number one thing you want to look for in romaine lettuce, really any lettuce, is to make sure there's no bugs on the outside of the lettuce. So just make sure you rinse and wash your lettuce really well. So I have this whole head. I'm gonna keep it all together and just take off about the bottom 1 to 2 inches. And then what I like to do is I usually either cut an X through the top, or if this is kind of wilty, I'll just chop off the whole thing like that. This one looks pretty good, so I'm just going to cut an X through the top of the lettuce like that, keep it bundled, and then we're going to wash it from the bottom. I want to keep this romaine lettuce bundled like this, and then I'm going to wash it from here and keep it facing down so then all the dirt, anything that's dirty, can flush out the top here. After you wash the lettuce like this, it's all the way flushed through and you've got all the dirt, anything out. I just keep it bundled like this and then start cutting this way from the bottom to the top. You can cut it into 1-inch pieces like this for a salad, or if the pieces are too large, like I said, you can just go straight down the middle like this and then go from the bottom all the way to the top. This shredded romaine can then be put in a salad spinner and then you can wash it and dry it, but this is best used right away so then it doesn't start getting red from oxidation. And the first thing with iceberg lettuce that I like to do is just take off any wilty outside leaves. So you can see this outer leaf has kind of started to wilt and get a little yucky, so we're just gonna take those off and discard them. Did you know that with iceberg lettuce, if it starts to get super wilty like this, what you can do is just cut it up and put it in a bowl of ice water and it will immediately crisp right up. With iceberg lettuce, I like to do the same thing that I do with my romaine lettuce, which is to take off this stem part right here, just cut it straight off, and then rinse it going this way with water so then everything can flush out the bottom. To cut iceberg lettuce, I'll just take my chef's knife and go straight down the middle, and then you can use as much or as little as you need. For example, if I'm only going to use half, I would put this whole half back wrapped in a paper towel in the fridge, make sure it's as dry as possible before I cut into it. And you can cut it in multiple ways. If you want to just shred lettuce, you can just go straight down the side like this. You can also just do a rough chop, turn it 90 degrees and just go the exact same way. When you're storing lettuce, make sure that you cover it with a paper towel in a Ziploc bag or container. That way it can absorb any moisture and it will help it stay fresh. Next up, we have asparagus. Whenever I want to pick asparagus, I always try and find really thin stalks. The really large ones tend to be really woody, more firm, stringy. I really like the small thin ones because they're very tender, delicious, they won't get stuck in your teeth, and they just taste better. When you're shopping for asparagus, make sure you find some that are green all throughout and that don't have too dry of stems at the bottom. I'm going to keep the asparagus in this same bundle and then just chop off this whole bottom woody part because that part's not really good to eat. Another tip is if you don't have asparagus already in a bundle like this, if you've bought it in a bag or from bulk, another way that you can know where to chop off the asparagus is to just bend it. Every asparagus kind of has a point. Whoop. And that is like the point where it becomes from hard to edible. And so that's a good test to know where to cut your asparagus. After that, you can just take off the rubber bands and rinse them under cool water. Kind of spread them out like this to make sure that there's no mold or bugs, anything like that. I usually like to serve asparagus just whole in stalks like this. However, if you don't want them like that and you want them cut up into smaller pieces, then you can just do this. So whenever I'm cutting asparagus, I always cut the end pieces a little bit smaller than I would the top pieces. That's because these pieces will cook for about the same amount of time. And last, I'm going to show you how to properly cut broccoli. Broccoli has lots and lots of little speckles and little crevices where things can get stuck or hide. And so I always inspect the broccoli, make sure that there's nothing hiding in there. And then what I like to do is just go from the top. So I will put the broccoli just like this, so the crowns are facing down. And then I just start kind of whacking the broccoli crowns, like these little heads, just right off at the biggest part of the stem here. They have natural little florets, just kind of rotating the stem like this, and then I have the stem here. So now I've got like bigger chunks like this, I've got smaller ones. With broccoli, you really want to make sure that they cook evenly, so you want all your pieces to be about the same. This one is way bigger than most of these smaller ones, so what I'm going to do is, even though this is one floret, I'm going to cut it into smaller pieces as best I can. Another thing you can do is to actually eat this stem. They're actually really tender and tasty. So first, I like to cut off the very bottom piece that was, exposed at the store. This is usually dried out and it's not very good, might be dirty. But if there's anything super fibrous, you can see all along the ridge here that it's a little bit like, you can just see that there's a kind of a separation. And then I'm just going to cut straight down, trying to preserve as much of the broccoli as I can. And then this can be cut up, and it is actually so good. So put it on the flattest side, and especially like for soups, you definitely want to use this part. There's no reason not to. And these are so tender. Look how tender that is. If you want to put them in your soup, just cut them up like this, line them up, and you want to do about, I'd say 1/2-inch pieces, just about the same as celery. So now you've got these broccoli stems, and you can use these in any way that you use regular broccoli. Just throw these in the same recipe. They taste pretty much the same, and they're very good for you. One really easy way to eat more fruits and vegetables is to cut up your fruits and vegetables, put them in a tray like this, and just keep it in your fridge all the time. When things are prepared, they're way easier to grab for than something that's quick and maybe not quite as healthy. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. If you like this video, make sure you watch this video coming up next, and we'll see you next week. Bye.